What's up everyone, Jared here. So back when leaks about Sony's Xperia Z2 started trickling down, I started to get interested. But I never read too much into leaks until at least a couple of months before a device's announcement. And based on Sony's past track record for always sort of being a step or two behind the other major OEMs, I can't say I had high hopes. Those couple of months blew past and Sony announces their latest flagship smartphone. Enter the Sony Xperia Z2. Now, although cosmetically it may look similar to the Xperia Z1, there's enough physical differences to make it feel like a new phone. At least to me, and probably because it's a brand new phone. In fact, that's probably the main reason. A supposed shatterproof 5.2-inch Full HD tri-luminous display with Sony's X Reality engine, on-screen, back, home, and recent apps buttons, respectfully slim bezels, 2.2 megapixel front cam, dual front-facing speakers, attractive and comfortable beveled edges, waterproofed micro USB, SIM card, and micro SD card ports, magnetic charging port on the left, power, volume, and dedicated camera buttons on the right, glass backing, 20.7 megapixel rear camera. Now there's no doubt that this device looks the part of a premium, high-quality Sony product, but what about the user experience, and of course, the performance? I've actually always liked Sony's UI ever since I first got my hands on the Xperia ZL. From the icons and the dark black look with simple white text in the pull-down tray to the slide-out menu in the app tray. To me, it's always had this sort of refined and slick feeling to it, and there's actually quite a few different ways to customize the look and feel of it. So, you can either long press or pinch in on the home screen to make all your arrangement changes, but in addition to the typical widgets, apps, and wallpaper options, there's also a themes option. There's a bunch pre-installed, but you can also download a bunch more. Most cost around $3, but they do change the look throughout the UI quite a bit and look pretty cool. But looks aren't everything. The Xperia Z2 also packs a bunch of functionality too. In settings under Xperia connectivity, you've got a bunch of options. Now the one-touch setup is actually quite limiting in that it requires another Xperia device that's running at least Android 4.4 or greater. Throw settings allows you to quickly wirelessly play movies and music on TVs and speakers that support the function. And you've even got an option to connect your PlayStation DualShock 3 controller for playing games. And here's another neat thing you can do. Select which system icons you're okay with showing up in your status bar, and you can pick and choose which apps display notifications. And check out the sound settings. Look at all those neat options in there. Tap on sound effects and there's even more settings. I've spent some time playing around with these one night and they're a lot of fun to play with. So you've got lots of options to get the sound that's right for you. They've even packed in an option for audio inputs, and there's a high-res audio via USB option. And in case you were wondering, no, the dual front-facing speakers don't even come close to the new HTC One, but they do get the job done the same way the Galaxy S5 speaker does. And jumping into display, we've got even more neat stuff to tinker around with, and this is actually where the toggle for that X Reality engine I mentioned before lives. So I played around with it, and I'll be totally honest, to my eyes, it does absolutely nothing. But based on many other reviews I've read, it does make a difference by making the color and sharpness of videos and pictures pop a little bit more. Again, I couldn't tell a difference, but it's probably just my eyes, so I'll actually leave it on because why not? We've also got an option to tweak the display's white balance. Now, because I'm terrible at color balancing, let alone white balancing a display, I just left it on the default settings. But it's great that they included that option. So as far as the overall feel of the UI goes, I really like it. It's slick and sharp looking, and the settings menu has more than enough options to really dial in a great experience. A huge part of the overall experience is the display. So like I mentioned before, it's a 5.2-inch Full HD tri-luminous IPS display with a DPI of 424. Now my biggest complaint about the Xperia ZL and Z1's display was the viewing angles. Now, realistically speaking, no one is going to be viewing their phone on such dramatic angles. But it is a bit annoying to have the phone maybe slightly angled and have the colors start to darken and disappear. They improved it slightly on the Z1, and now with the Z2, it's been considerably improved even more, though it still doesn't have the viewing angles of other new devices from Samsung and HTC, for example. And I gotta tell you, the colors are awesome, and to me, they actually look more accurate than any other Android device I've ever used. But that's just me. You might have a different opinion of what looks right to you. So now, let's move on to the performance. Sony really spec'd out the Xperia Z2. Under the hood, it packs the quad-core Snapdragon 801 processor, clocked at 2.3 GHz, an Adreno 330 GPU, and 3 gigs of RAM. So keep that number in mind, 3 gigabytes of RAM. Now when benchmarked with Geekbench, it scored 2,599, and when benchmarked with Antutu, it scored 33,050, which is actually below the HTC One M8, the Samsung Galaxy S5, and the Samsung Galaxy Note 3. So how is it that a device with the same amount of RAM as the Galaxy Note 3 and the same CPU as the new HTC One and Galaxy S5 score lower than all those three devices, especially considering Sony's UI is much lighter than Samsung's TouchWiz? Now, generally speaking, if a device scores lower than others, it usually means nothing because oftentimes that device still performs like the others. But believe me when I say I'm really sad to report that in this case, the Xperia Z2 does not perform like the others. It lags and hangs on random events and actions throughout the device, but it's not like it's always there. Most of the time it performs just fine, but it lags and hangs enough to mention. In my Samsung Galaxy S5 review, I mentioned that it was quicker than the S4 thanks to the new hardware and a slightly optimized TouchWiz, but slower than the new HTC One. And that was with me comparing it against the new HTC One. So if I were to compare the performance of the Z2 to the Galaxy S5, to be blunt, the Z2 is consistently laggier than the Galaxy S5. Again though, it's not like every couple of taps of the screen nothing happens. The Z2 is still fast, and when you're actually using an app, for example, 95% of the time it performs just fine. So yes, even though it's a bit slower and laggier than other devices, it's still not even close to being bad enough to deter me from buying one. One of the big features of the Z2 is its waterproof and dust-resistant aspect. There really seems to be quite a bit of confusion and misinformation about the waterproof ability of the Xperia Z2. Hell, even I'm slightly confused. So the Galaxy S5 is considered water and dust resistant, but the Xperia Z2 is considered waterproof, but only technically. The Z2 is rated for just 0.5 of a meter deeper than the Galaxy S5 and can stay underwater for a much longer period of time. You also have to factor in the pressure of the water. So like the Galaxy S5, you're not going to be recording your underwater scuba diving adventure, but you will be tweeting from the shower and maybe even playing in the shallow end of the pool. So the Z2 comes with a big, non-removable 3200 mAh battery, and it's been really solid for me. When watching video or playing games, it does tend to start eating away, but no more than any other top-end powerhouse device. But if you have a day where all you're doing is light tasks like emails, social media, texting, and a few phone calls, you'll notice it sips away at the battery ever so delicately. And then of course there's all the neat things you can do to tweak the standby and power saving modes. I can see people easily getting days off of a single charge. So far, honestly, in my experiences with the Z2, I have to say, best battery life of the year. And so finally we arrive at one of the most impressive aspects of the Z2, the 20.7 megapixel camera. And Sony's done a great job of making it a big part of the phone. First off, you've got the dedicated camera button, which can launch the camera app whether the device is sleeping, at the lock screen, or even in an app. And there's also a widget you can use and edit to include shortcuts to your favorite shooting modes. I did notice a strange bug with mine though. With the device asleep, pressing the camera button to wake and launch the camera, and then tapping the 3-dot settings button makes the camera app sort of stutter or almost relaunch. And sometimes it even completely crashes to the home screen with a little message that literally says the camera app has crashed. And if you have the camera set to manual mode, with the Z2 asleep, pressing the camera button will launch the camera app into full auto mode. But then launching the camera by tapping the icon, it'll launch into the mode you last used, like manual mode for example. And the camera's crashed on me several times due to overheating. Seriously, it literally crashes with a warning message that says the camera is too hot. Seeing as the camera is such a big deal on the Z2, you'd think Sony would have paid attention and ironed out those issues before launch. But aside from that, I really dig the camera, and of course it takes really sharp pictures. And to my eyes, the colors captured captured are really accurate. The full auto mode, which Sony has decided to call Superior Auto, for the most part does a great job for most situations. But I prefer to have it set to manual mode, and no, not because I know what I'm doing, but because in manual mode you can still have pretty much everything set to auto, but still have quick access to everything. In fact, I'm a little confused why they even included the Superior Auto mode. To my eyes, with manual mode enabled, pictures look the same as they do with Superior Auto mode enabled. There's a bunch of other modes too which Sony has renamed, like Time Shift, which is actually slow motion video recording at 120 frames per second. Background defocus, which is just as the name describes. I haven't played around with this effect on the Z2 as much as I have on the Galaxy S5 and HTC One, because I found it much harder to get to work than I did on the other two phones. And then of course there's 4K video recording. Now I don't have a tripod attachment head for smartphones, but based on the shaky hand video I took, it looks just as good as the Galaxy S5's 4K video does. But all in all, when the camera isn't crashing on me, it does take some awesome pictures and great video. So, is the Sony Xperia Z2 worth your money? Overall, Sony has done a great job with the Z2, and most of the issues I've experienced can easily be fixed with a software update down the road. I've said that the Samsung Galaxy S5 was the best all-around device, but I also said that I hadn't gotten my hands on the Xperia Z2 yet, and my opinion might change once I do. Well, I can say that personally, I think that the Sony Xperia Z2 is now my choice for best all-around device, but I'm saying that with the expectation that a future software update fixes the issues I've experienced. But the LG G3 is yet to be released at the time of this recording, so we'll see how long the Z2 can hold that title. Anyways, that's it for this one. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Cheers. This video is sponsored by UnlockThatPhone.com. Unlock any phone, any carrier, worldwide. Visit UnlockThatPhone.com for more information.